grows together naturally.
See, for vegetarians, bro.
So it's good season to do these sort of arrangements with the spring flowers, but you can only use flowers that grow in the same season. So you can only use spring flowers together, summer flowers together, things that naturally would grow together in a meadow. So you can't use like tulips and then chrysanthemums or something like that because they don't grow together. And the other thing with this arrangement is you can't, how you design it, it has to be how they naturally grow. So like with the irises naturally grow quite tall. So these would go quite tall in the arrangement. Things like the hyacinths, they don't grow very tall, do they? So they would have to go quite low down. And the other thing with vegetative arrangement is you're not allowed to use anything decorative. Anything that isn't natural, you can't use.
So this is like flowers and berries and...
Well, you can't really use foliage because do you see foliage growing in... No. Yeah, so, well, no, you can use some foliage, but you can't sort of be sitting there using like eucalyptus and palm leaves. It has to be stuff that grows quite naturally. So things like mosses and the ivy and things like that are very good for it. And so we're going to use quite a low bowl, and we're going to use Oasis as the medium for this one. Now, we have got quite a lot of ivy here, and you can use like the Galex leaves as well for your foliage. But the key with a vegetative arrangement is there's to be no manipulation of plants or like plant material. So you can't do any rolling of leaves or anything like that. Yeah, nothing decorative can be used at all. This design drives me insane when I do it from level 4. Everything you think you do right, you don't. Yeah, that's it. So how they grow naturally together, they grow quite closely together, so you can use things like the Galex leaves in groups and things to cover all your sort of foam and things like that. You don't have to do them all at the same height, but you've got to think if the one's travelling that way, they've all got to travel similar sort of ways, yeah? So remember, you can use moss to help cover your Oasis. And things like your ivy, you've got to think about it naturally grows quite sort of messy, doesn't it? Grows curvy, climbs, things like that. So you've got to bear that in mind for this. Now, it's going to be very tricky because we are very tempted, especially like with English floristry and things, to go very decorative on things, but you really can't. You can't pretty it up at all. So all iris grows quite tall together. So when you're doing these, they all have to be not the same height, but similar heights. So how you would find, it literally is that you're walking into the field and you're watching them to see how they grow. So iris, very tall like this, yeah? Things like the daffodils, they grow quite tall as well, but these have to be in like different sections, so you can't mix iris and daffodils together. They have to have their own groups, so to speak, yeah? So that's the sort of two groups there. Then when it comes to going lower down, things like with your hyacinths, these don't grow very tall, so you can use these lower down in the arrangement, but again, they have to be in their own group. You can't start mixing them with the daffodils or anything like that. They have to be used quite low down. Okay, so you've got your groups going on there. You can use things like the Genesta, but again, look at how it is. It's quite messy how it naturally grows. No, it doesn't have to. It can literally, you can do whatever sort of amounts that you want, really. But when you're using them, it really is important not to mix them together because they don't grow together naturally mixing, do they? So you have to make sure their groups are very different. So things like the Genesta grows quite sort of wild sort of looking, doesn't it? So it's good to try to keep it as much to its natural setting as you can. So I'm going to do a second thing of Genesta just at the back, because that's going to help me cover up a lot of my Oasis foam. Another iris there, so put that in there. And then I think that's probably, I might do another bit of Genesta just coming up towards the front. And then you're going to need to cover your Oasis. So, like I said, we can use Galex leaves, you can use the ivy, you can use mosses. I'll grab some mosses out, but mosses are quite a good way of covering up all your Oasis. But you can look at things that do grow quite naturally. So you can use the stones, because they're not really decorative, are they, the stones? So you could find them. You could find like little bits of the bark in the cupboard. You could use bits of that in it, but you just can't use them. Even though you're using them decoratively, you can't use them in a decorative way. So you've got to think about how would they sit naturally. So if I was going to use the stones, I'm not going to just choose like the sort of nicest shapes and things. You're just going to naturally cluster them together on top of each other. Yeah? So you've got to make sure the whole Oasis is covered with moss and Galex leaves. Use some stones or bark, bits like that, but don't use them decoratively, yeah? And all your mediums should be covered. And then that is a vegetative arrangement.